I'm Anna, 29 female. I live in a small but cozy apartment in the city where I work from home as a medical records technician. It's a quiet life, one that I've carefully built to be a sanctuary, and the undisputed king of that sanctuary is Leo, my 4-year-old golden retriever and certified emotional support animal. He's more than a pet. He's the anchor that keeps my ship steady through the turbulent waters of a generalized anxiety disorder. This is the story of how my own sister cut that anchor loose while I was at my most vulnerable, and how a kind stranger's phone call gave me the strength not just to get him back, but to make sure my sister understood the true cost of her betrayal. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My world is one of codes, files, and quiet precision. As a medical records technician, I spend my days ensuring that the chaotic, often painful stories of people's lives are translated into orderly data. There's a comfort in it, a sense of control that my own brain chemistry often denies me. My anxiety isn't the dramatic, movie-style panic attack kind. It's a low, persistent hum, a constant background static that can surge without warning, making simple things like a crowded grocery store or an unexpected phone call feel like climbing a mountain. For years, I managed it with therapy and medication, but the real breakthrough came in the form of a clumsy, fluffy, perpetually optimistic golden retriever puppy I named Leo. From the moment I brought him home, he seemed to understand his purpose. He wasn't just a dog, he was my partner. When the hum of anxiety would start to rise, before I even consciously registered it, Leo would be there. A wet nose nudging my hand, a heavy head resting on my lap, his warm, solid presence a physical interruption to the spiraling thoughts in my mind. He'd insist on a game of fetch or lean his entire body against my legs until I sat on the floor with him, my fingers buried in his thick, soft fur, my breathing slowly syncing with his calm, steady rhythm. He was the reason I took walks every day, forcing me out into the fresh air. He was the reason I had a routine, a predictable schedule of feeding, playing, and cuddling that structured my days and kept the chaos at bay. My therapist was thrilled. Leo, she said, was better than any prescription she could write. He was my living, breathing dose of serotonin, my furry, four-legged lifeline. My sister, Chloe, never quite understood my bond with Leo. At 31, 2 years my senior, Chloe lived a life that was the complete opposite of mine. Hers was a world of filters, hashtags, and curated perfection. As a lifestyle blogger, her job was to project an image of effortless grace and aspirational happiness. Her apartment was minimalist white, her clothes were always on trend, and her social media feed was a nonstop stream of brunch photos, sponsored posts for organic face masks, and motivational quotes plastered over pictures of sunsets. She was beautiful, popular, and successful in her own way, but there was a hollowness to it that I could never ignore. To Chloe, Leo wasn't a lifeline, he was a nuisance, an accessory that didn't match her aesthetic. He's so big, she'd say, wrinkling her nose as Leo tried to greet her with an enthusiastic tail wag. And the shedding, Anna, how do you live with it? She'd pat his head with 2 perfectly manicured fingers, a gesture that looked more like she was checking for dust than showing affection. Despite her feelings, she was still my sister. We didn't have any other family, our parents having passed away a few years prior, so we clung to each other out of a sense of duty and shared history. When I was diagnosed with appendicitis and told I needed emergency surgery, Chloe was the only person I could call. The doctor said I'd be in the hospital for at least 3 or 4 days, maybe longer depending on the recovery. My mind didn't go to the surgery, the pain, or the recovery. It went straight to Leo. Who would take care of him? My friends all worked long hours or lived in apartments that didn't allow dogs. Chloe was my only option. I called her from the emergency room, the phone pressed to my ear, a wave of nausea and anxiety rolling through me. Chloe, I'm in the ER. They have to take out my appendix. I need you to watch Leo. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear her calculating the inconvenience. Oh my God, Anna, are you okay? she asked, her voice a practiced blend of concern. Surgery? That's awful. Of course, don't worry about a thing. I'll come get his key. You just focus on getting better. I felt a flood of relief so intense it made me dizzy. Thank you, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Seriously, Chloe, thank you so much. His food is in the pantry, his schedule is on the fridge. He just needs his walks and lots of cuddles. Cuddles, got it? She said, her tone just a little too bright. He'll be fine, we'll have a little adventure together. Maybe I'll even get some cute content out of it. #dog-sitting adventures. I winced but pushed the feeling down. She was helping me, that's what mattered. Before they wheeled me into the pre-op area, I sent her a long text with every detail I could think of. His feeding times, the specific route he liked for his evening walk, the way he liked his ears scratched, the fact that he was scared of thunderstorms. I ended it with, "He's my whole world, Chloe. Please take good care of him." Her reply came back instantly. A single, generic heart emoji. Looking back, that emoji should have been the first warning sign. It was hollow, a perfect symbol of the superficial support she was offering. But in that moment, drugged with pain medication and terrified of the impending surgery, I chose to see it as a promise. A promise that my sister, despite her perfectly curated life, would be there for me and for the creature that meant everything to me. A promise she had no intention of keeping. The surgery went well, but the recovery was rougher than expected. An infection set in, turning my projected 3-day hospital stay into a full week. The first couple of days were a blur of pain, antibiotics, and restless sleep. My phone was my only connection to the outside world, and my primary concern was Leo. I texted Chloe constantly, asking for updates. The first day, she sent a picture of Leo looking confused in her stark white living room, a throw pillow with a geometric pattern clutched in his mouth. The caption read, "Someone's making himself at home, face with tears of joy dog life oops." I smiled, relieved. He looked okay. I texted back, "He loves that pillow. Thanks again, Chloe, you're a lifesaver." The next day, my text went unanswered for hours. When she finally replied, it was short and clipped. "He's fine, just busy with him." I tried to call, but it went straight to voicemail. I told myself she was just occupied, that a high-energy golden retriever was a lot of work for someone not used to it. She was probably out on a long walk with him or playing in the park. The stories I invented to soothe my own anxiety were far kinder than the reality. The third day, I asked if she could bring him to the hospital. Many hospitals have programs that allow pets to visit, and the thought of seeing his happy face and feeling his fur under my hand felt like the best medicine I could possibly receive. My text read, "Hey, I know it's a huge ask, but the nurse said the hospital has a courtyard, and they might let you bring Leo for a quick visit. Seeing him would be amazing." The reply came back almost instantly. "Anna, that's impossible. I have work and I can't just drop everything to drive a dog across town. He's fine, stop worrying." The tone was sharp, irritated. It felt like a slap. I was lying in a hospital bed, feeling weak and miserable, and she was making me feel like a burden for asking about my own dog. I apologized, feeling a familiar wave of guilt. I was being difficult. I was putting her out. I needed to just be grateful she was helping at all. For the next few days, I limited my texts to one a day, a simple "hope you and Leo are having a good day." Most of the time, I got no response. When I did, it was a one-word answer. "Fine. Good. Yep." The silence was deafening. Every time a nurse came in, I hoped she was carrying a bouquet of flowers from my sister. None ever came. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leaped, hoping it was a picture of Leo, a funny story about something he'd done. It never was. The anxiety I'd held at bay for so long started to creep back in, stronger than ever. The hospital room felt like a cage. The steady beep of the monitors was a countdown to a disaster I couldn't name. I started having nightmares where I was calling for Leo, and he wouldn't come, his familiar bark getting fainter and fainter until it disappeared entirely. I'd wake up with my heart pounding, my hospital gown damp with sweat. Finally, on the 7th day, the doctor gave me the green light to go home. I was weak and sore, but I didn't care. All I wanted was to get back to my apartment and bury my face in Leo's fur. I called Chloe to tell her the good news. I'm being discharged this afternoon. Can you meet me at my place around 3 p.m.? I can't wait to see you and Leo. There was a strange, brittle silence on the other end of the line. Oh, she said, her voice sounding strained. Today? That's great news. Actually, something's come up with work. A last-minute showing. I can't make it at 3. Disappointment washed over me, cold and heavy. Oh, okay. Well, can you just drop Leo off before you go? Or leave my key under the mat and make sure he's inside? Right about that, she started, and the world seemed to tilt on its axis. Listen, Anna, we need to talk, but not on the phone. I'll come by tonight, around 7. Talk about what? Chloe, is Leo okay? Is he sick? Did something happen? My voice was rising, panic clawing at my throat. He's fine, Anna, God, you're so dramatic, just rest. I'll see you at 7. And she hung up. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a sound of absolute finality. The next few hours were the longest of my life. A friend from work came to pick me up, her cheerful chatter barely registering as I stared out the window, my stomach churning with a nameless dread. When she dropped me off at my building, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. My apartment was always filled with the little sounds of Leo, the jingle of his collar, the soft thud of his tail against the floor, the happy sigh he'd let out as he settled in for a nap. Now, there was nothing. An unnerving, profound silence. The apartment was spotless, cleaner than I'd left it. Too clean. Leo's water bowl was gone. His favorite squeaky toy, the one he always left in the middle of the living room floor, was nowhere to be seen. His leash wasn't hanging by the door. It was as if he had been erased. I walked through my small apartment, my hand tracing the space where his bed should have been. Every empty corner screamed his absence. The schedule I had so carefully written out for Chloe was still on the fridge, held up by a magnet. Every line of it felt like a mockery. I sank onto my couch, the silence pressing in on me, and I waited for my sister to arrive and explain the unexplainable. I waited for her to walk in and tell me this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a betrayal, and the silence was just the beginning. The clock on the wall ticked with agonizing slowness. Each minute that passed felt like an hour, stretching the silence in my apartment until it was thin and ready to snap. I sat perfectly still on my couch, my post-surgery abdomen aching with a dull throb that was nothing compared to the sharp, stabbing pain of dread in my chest. I had tried calling Chloe a dozen times since she'd hung up on me, but each call went directly to her voicemail, her cheerful, pre-recorded voice a cruel joke. Hey, you've reached Chloe. Leave a message and make it a great day. I didn't leave a message. What could I possibly say? Where is my dog? Where is my family? Where is the one living thing that makes my world feel safe? At precisely 7:15 p.m., 15 minutes late, my sister breezed through the door. She wasn't carrying a dog leash. She was carrying a large paper bag from an expensive-looking bakery and a sympathy card. The sight of it sent a chill down my spine. Anna, you're home. You look pale, she said, her voice oozing a synthetic sympathy. She placed the bag and the card on my coffee table. I brought you cronuts, the kind with the salted caramel filling you like. She was avoiding my eyes, bustling around the small space, taking off her jacket, smoothing her hair. Her movements were jerky, unnatural. Chloe, where is Leo? I asked, my voice flat and cold. I didn't have the energy for pleasantries. She finally stopped moving and turned to face me. She let out a long, theatrical sigh, the kind she used when she was about to deliver what she considered to be a difficult but necessary truth. Okay, Anna, I need you to just listen and not overreact, she began, sitting on the armchair opposite me, perching on the edge as if she were ready to flee. This is going to be hard to hear, but it's for the best, for both of you. My blood ran cold. For both of us, what are you talking about? Where is he? She wrung her hands in her lap, a pained expression carefully arranged on her face. Leo is gone. The word hung in the air between us, small and monstrous. Gone? What do you mean gone? Did he run away? Was he stolen? My mind raced through 1,000 horrible scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. She shook her head slowly, her eyes wide with what was supposed to pass for sorrow. No, not like that. Anna, having him this week, it was a real eye-opener. He was just so much work. He was anxious and whiny all the time, he chewed on my shoes, he needed constant attention. It was completely overwhelming. I realized that he was too much for you to handle, especially now, while you're recovering. It wasn't fair to you, and it wasn't fair to him. He needs a big yard, a family with kids, a different kind of life. I stared at her, uncomprehending. The words were English, but they made no sense. What did you do, Chloe? I found him a new home, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if she were sharing a wonderful secret. A wonderful family out in the suburbs. They have a huge backyard, 2 young boys who will run and play with him all day. I met them through a friend in real estate. They were looking for a dog just like him. It was fate. He's going to be so happy there, Anna. He's going to have a better life. She delivered the lines with such conviction, as if she genuinely expected me to thank her, as if she had done me a favor. She had taken my lifeline, my emotional support, my best friend, and had given him away like an old sweater she'd decided I no longer needed. The room began to spin. You gave him away? I whispered, the words catching in my throat. You gave my dog away without asking me. I was trying to help you, she insisted, her voice rising defensively. You're always so stressed out, and he was just adding to it. I made a tough decision for your own good. Rage, pure and hot, burned through the fog of shock and grief. My own good? You think you know what's for my own good? He wasn't stress, Chloe. He was the only thing that kept me from falling apart. He is a certified emotional support animal. You had no right. I tried to stand up, but a sharp pain in my abdomen sent me sinking back into the couch, tears streaming down my face. How could you do this? Her facade of compassion crumbled, replaced by cold irritation. Oh, stop being so dramatic. He's just a dog. You'll get another one. I did what I thought was best. You'll thank me for this one day. She stood up, grabbing her purse. I have to go. I have a dinner thing. We can talk more tomorrow when you've calmed down. And with that, she walked out, leaving me alone in my silent, empty apartment with a bag of cronuts and a gaping hole in my life where my heart used to be. The next 2 days were the worst of my life. I didn't eat. I barely slept. I just lay on the couch, wrapped in Leo's favorite blanket, inhaling the faint, lingering scent of him and weeping until my eyes were swollen shut. The grief was a physical weight, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. I felt his absence in every cell of my body. On the 3rd morning, my phone rang, vibrating on the coffee table next to the untouched bakery bag. The number was unfamiliar. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something made me answer. I picked it up, my voice a raw croak. Hello. Hello, am I speaking with Anna? A man's voice asked. It was gentle, hesitant. Yes, I managed to say. My name is Mark, he said. This is going to sound very strange, but my wife Sarah and I, we have your dog, Leo. The world stopped. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, that the grief had finally made me hallucinate. What? How? Where did you get him? It's a bit of a story, he said. A woman, she said her name was Chloe, gave him to us a few days ago. She told us she was his owner and that she was moving to an apartment that didn't allow pets. She seemed very convincing. But Sarah is a vet tech. And when we took him for his initial checkup yesterday, the vet scanned his microchip. Your name and number came up as the registered owner. We tried calling yesterday, but there was no answer. We had a feeling that something wasn't right. The story Chloe told us didn't seem to match the dog. He's been so sad, just lying by the door. So, we decided to call the number on the chip. I started sobbing, not tears of grief this time, but of overwhelming, earth-shattering relief. He was safe. He was okay. Someone had found him. He's mine, I choked out between sobs. She's my sister. I was in the hospital and she was supposed to be watching him. She gave him away. She told me she gave him to a family with a big yard. There was a heavy silence on the other end, and then Mark spoke again, his voice filled with a quiet anger. She told us she lived in a small apartment and it wasn't fair to him. She didn't mention a sister or a hospital. He paused. Anna, where are you right now? We're bringing your dog home. The hour it took for Mark and Sarah to drive from their suburban home to my city apartment was a strange mixture of euphoric anticipation and simmering rage. The relief of knowing Leo was safe was so potent it was almost painful, but underneath it, a cold, hard anger at my sister was beginning to crystallize. Chloe hadn't just betrayed me. She had constructed an elaborate web of lies to do it, tailoring her story to each audience. To me, she was the compassionate sister making a tough choice for my own good. To Mark and Sarah, she was the heartbroken owner forced to give up her beloved pet. She had played the victim in a crisis of her own creation. When the doorbell finally rang, I practically tore it open. There on my doorstep stood a kind-looking couple in their early 30s, and between them, his tail giving a weak, uncertain thump against the doorframe, was Leo. The moment his eyes met mine, it was like a switch flipped. His ears perked up, a low whine escaped his throat, and then he was launching himself at me, all paws and happy yelps. I sank to the floor, ignoring the pull at my incision, and wrapped my arms around him. He licked away my tears, his whole body wriggling with a joy that mirrored my own. I buried my face in his fur, and for the first time in a week, I could breathe again. After a few minutes, I looked up at the couple who had brought him back to me. "I don't know how to thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Please come in." Mark and Sarah stepped inside, their faces a mixture of relief and sympathy. Sarah, the vet tech, had a knowing, gentle look in her eyes. "We're just so glad we found you," she said softly. The moment we got him, something felt off. He wasn't settling in, he was just waiting. When Chloe dropped him off, she was in such a rush. She had a little designer carrier for him, which was strange for a dog his size, and gave us a bag of fancy, grain-free food he wouldn't even touch. She cried a little, but it felt rehearsed. Mark nodded in agreement. She gave us this whole sob story about her new condo's strict, no pets policy and how it was breaking her heart. She even made us sign a little handwritten contract saying we'd give him a good home. It all seemed a bit dramatic, but we felt bad for her. My stomach turned. A designer carrier? A handwritten contract? This wasn't a spontaneous, misguided act of concern. This was premeditated. Did she ask for money? I asked, a sick feeling growing in my gut. Sarah and Mark exchanged an uncomfortable look. "She refused to take any," Sarah said. "She made a big show of saying she didn't want money, just the perfect home for her best boy." Honestly, I think that's what made us believe her at first. It seemed so selfless. But I knew my sister. Chloe never did anything for free. Her selflessness was a performance, a tool she used to get what she wanted. By refusing money, she made herself look like a tragic hero, absolving herself of any guilt and making her story more believable. She hadn't sold my dog, she had rehomed him, a carefully chosen verb that painted her as a savior, not a villain. We sat and talked for another hour. They told me more about their encounter with Chloe, the little details that had seemed odd at the time, but now clicked into place as pieces of a larger deception. She had met them at a neutral location, a park halfway between the city and their suburb, claiming her apartment was a mess of moving boxes. She had forgotten his favorite toy and his bed, promising to mail them later. Every detail was designed to control the narrative and prevent them from discovering the truth. As they got up to leave, Sarah put a comforting hand on my arm. "I'm so sorry this happened to you," she said, her voice filled with genuine empathy. "Your sister, well, I'm glad Leo had that microchip. It's the best proof of ownership you can have." And that's when the first piece of my plan began to form. The microchip. A tiny, indisputable piece of data that proved Leo was mine. It was a language I understood. I was a medical records technician. My entire career was built on the principle that documented, verifiable data was the ultimate truth. Chloe's world was built on feelings, aesthetics, and carefully crafted narratives. My world was built on facts, and I was about to use my facts to dismantle her fiction. After they left, I spent the rest of the day with Leo glued to my side, his comforting weight a constant reminder of what I had almost lost. But while my hands were stroking his fur, my mind was racing. I started digging. Chloe's social media was my first stop. I scrolled back through her posts from the week I was in the hospital. As I'd suspected, there wasn't a single mention of her dog-sitting adventures. Her feed was full of its usual content. A new partnership with a boutique tea company, a flat lay of her work from home essentials, a selfie of her at a gallery opening. She had seamlessly edited me, my surgery, and my dog out of her perfect life. But then I found it. 3 days ago, the day she gave Leo away, she had posted a series of stories on her Instagram. The first few were about her incredibly busy day full of meetings. Then there was a teary-eyed selfie, her makeup still perfect, with the caption, "Sometimes you have to make heartbreaking choices for the greater good. Feeling sad but resolute. Sending love to you all." At the time, her followers had flooded her with messages of support. "You're so strong. Whatever it is, you've got this." Sending positive vibes. They all assumed it was about some vague career struggle or a dramatic but ultimately trivial friendship dispute. No one knew she was talking about giving away her sister's emotional support dog. She had used her platform to preemptively frame her betrayal as a noble sacrifice. She was curating her own innocence. The rage that had been simmering inside me now boiled over. This wasn't just about getting Leo back. He was already home, safe with me. This was about justice. Chloe had used her brand, her influence, and her carefully constructed image to lie and manipulate everyone around her. She had counted on me being too weak, too grief-stricken, too dramatic to fight back. She thought she had committed the perfect crime, leaving behind a trail of curated emotions instead of evidence. But she had left evidence. The microchip data, the testimony of Mark and Sarah, and she had underestimated me. She saw me as fragile, anxious Anna. She was about to meet the other Anna, the one who spent 8 hours a day finding the truth in a mountain of data, one meticulous entry at a time. And I was about to create a record of her actions that she would never be able to delete. For the next week, my apartment transformed from a recovery ward into a war room. With Leo sleeping soundly at my feet, his presence a constant source of strength, I channeled every ounce of my focus and anger into a single objective, creating an airtight case against Chloe. My revenge wouldn't be a screaming match or a dramatic family blow-up. That's what she would expect. That's a fire she could control, twisting it on her social media into another story of her, difficult but necessary, journey with a volatile family member. No, my revenge would be quiet, meticulous, and factual. It would be an audit of her character, and I would present my findings to the one audience she couldn't afford to lose, her followers. My first step was to gather my evidence. I emailed Mark and Sarah and asked if they would be willing to write down their entire experience with Chloe, from the first phone call to the moment they dropped Leo off with me. I asked them to be as detailed as possible. The things she said, the contract she made them sign, the location she chose for the handoff. They agreed without hesitation. Sarah even offered to get a signed, notarized statement from her vet, confirming the date and time they scanned Leo's microchip and found my information. Their willingness to help was a balm to my wounded spirit. They were strangers, yet they had shown me more kindness and integrity than my own sister. Next, I compiled my own documentation. I took screenshots of every text message exchange between me and Chloe while I was in the hospital, my pleas for updates, her curt replies, my unanswered questions. I saved the call logs showing her ignoring my calls. I photographed my hospital discharge papers, clearly showing the dates of my stay, which directly contradicted the narrative she would have needed to construct for her lie to work. And of course, I took a screenshot of her vague, teary-eyed Instagram story about making heartbreaking choices. Placed next to the timeline of my surgery and her radio silence, it painted a damning picture. But the cornerstone of my plan wasn't just exposing what she did, but why. I needed to understand her motive. It wasn't just that Leo was too much work. Chloe could have hired a dog walker or boarded him. This was personal. This was punitive. Why? I started thinking back over the past year. Chloe had been increasingly critical of my quiet life, constantly pushing me to be more like her. "You need to get out more, Anna. You should really start dressing better. That dog is holding you back from living your life." Her advice always felt less like concern and more like a command to conform to her brand. Leo, in his joyful, messy, unconditional existence, was a rejection of everything she valued. He was an uncurated, unpredictable element in her sister's life, and she couldn't control him, so she removed him. The final piece of the puzzle was the platform. A simple social media post could be dismissed as drama. I needed something more permanent, more credible. I decided to build a simple, clean web page. A single page, designed with all the minimalist aesthetic Chloe herself championed. The domain name I chose was simple and searchable, the truth about Chloe. calm. The title of the page would be A Story of a Sister, a Dog, and a Betrayal. On this page, I would lay out the evidence, piece by piece, like a legal document. I used my skills as a records technician to organize the information with cold, undeniable clarity. Section 1, the timeline. It started with my admission to the hospital and ended with Leo's return, with dated and timestamped screenshots of every text and call log. Section 2, the evidence. This included a scan of my hospital discharge papers, a copy of the notarized statement from the vet, and the written account from Mark and Sarah. Section 3, the social media facade. Here, I placed a screenshot of Chloe's tearful Instagram post right next to the timeline of her actions. The juxtaposition was brutal. The caption read, "The heartbreaking choice, made on this day, was not a personal struggle. It was the calculated act of giving away a family member's emotional support animal while they were recovering from major surgery." I wrote the narrative in a calm, factual tone, completely devoid of the emotional language Chloe used. I referred to myself as the sister, and Leo as the emotional support animal. I laid out the facts without embellishment, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. I knew that the cold, hard data would be far more damning to her audience of brand partners and followers than any tearful rant I could post. Brands want authenticity, but they run from liability. The story I was telling was one of calculated deception, of someone callously exploiting a family crisis for her own convenience and then lying about it to maintain her image. The target for the launch of this website was specific, the following Tuesday at 10:00 a.m. I knew from following her for years that this was the day her biggest collaboration of the year was set to go live. She had partnered with a high-end, ethical home goods brand called Aura Living, a company that built its entire identity around concepts of wellness, authenticity, and transparency. Chloe was their star influencer for their new fall collection. She had been teasing the launch for weeks, promising her followers a special discount code and a day of authentic living content stream. My story, I decided, would be the most authentic content of all. I prepared a single, simple post for my own rarely used social media accounts. It was a picture of me and Leo, reunited and happy. The caption would read, "So grateful to have my emotional support dog Leo back home safe after a traumatic week." For those who have asked what happened, the full, documented story can be found here. And then, the link, I didn't tag her. I didn't use any inflammatory hashtags. I would simply put the truth out there and let it do its work. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait for Tuesday. Tuesday morning arrived, crisp and clear. I woke up early, my heart pounding with a nervous energy that felt different from my usual anxiety. This was adrenaline. This was purpose. I took Leo for a long walk in the park, the simple act of holding his leash in my hand feeling like a victory. He chased a squirrel, rolled in a pile of leaves, and looked back at me with his familiar, happy grin, completely oblivious to the digital storm I was about to unleash. He was my reason, my motivation, and my evidence that what I was doing was right. Back at my apartment, I sat at my computer, a cup of tea growing cold beside me. At 9:55 a.m., I logged into Chloe's Instagram page. As expected, she was in full launch day mode. Her stories were a flurry of activity, a video of her unboxing an Aura Living candle, a poll asking her followers which minimalist throw blanket they preferred, a countdown timer to her 10:00 a.m. big reveal. She was a whirlwind of practiced enthusiasm, every smile, every gesture perfectly calibrated for maximum engagement. At exactly 10:00 a.m., my own post went live. The photo of me and Leo, his head resting peacefully in my lap, the simple, non-accusatory caption, and the link. I posted it on my Instagram and my Facebook, platforms I used so infrequently that my last post was from 6 months ago. Then I sent the link in a private message to 3 people. A local gossip blogger I knew followed Chloe religiously, a former friend of ours who had a falling out with Chloe over her manipulative behavior, and Mark. I didn't ask them to share it. I just said, "I thought you might want to see this." I knew they would do the rest. Then I closed my laptop. The hardest part of the plan was letting go, trusting that the truth was strong enough to travel on its own. I spent the next hour cleaning my apartment, playing with Leo, and deliberately not looking at my phone. It was an act of supreme self-control. Finally, around 11:15 a.m., my phone began to buzz, and it didn't stop. Curiosity finally won. I picked it up. My post had a handful of comments, mostly from confused friends asking if I was okay. But it was the notifications from other platforms that told the real story. The link was spreading. The gossip blogger had already written a short, salacious post titled, "Local Influencer Chloe's Heartbreaking Choice Revealed to be a Shocking Family Betrayal." The ex-friend had shared it on her Facebook page with the caption, "For anyone who has ever been on the receiving end of her authenticity." The truth always comes out. I clicked over to Chloe's Instagram. Her launch post for Aura Living, a beautifully shot photo of her meditating in her living room surrounded by their products, was live. But the comment section was a war zone. The first few comments were the usual fawning praise from her dedicated fans. "So gorgeous! Buying this all right now?" But then, the tide began to turn. A single comment appeared. "Has anyone seen this?" https://www.google.com/URL SA equals E and source equals Gmail and Q equals the truth about Chloe.com. It was followed by another and another. "Wait, is this true? Did you really give away your sister's support dog? I just read the whole thing, the screenshots, wow, unfollowing. Hey at Aura Living, is this the kind of authentic person you want representing your brand? Soam. Eon who abandons a sick family member's animal." The speed was breathtaking. It was like watching a dam break. For every positive comment, there were now 10 negative ones, all referencing the website, all expressing disgust and disbelief. Chloe, clearly in a panic, started deleting the comments as fast as they appeared, but it was no use. For every one she deleted, 5 more would pop up. People started commenting on her older posts, flooding her entire feed with the link. The Aura Living official Instagram page was also getting bombarded. Their latest post, which featured Chloe, was now filled with comments demanding they address the situation and cut ties with her. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. A moment later, a string of frantic texts came through. "Anna, what have you done? Take it down now. You're trying to ruin my life? This is slander, my lawyers will be in touch." I didn't reply. I just took a screenshot of the threatening texts and added them to the website under a new section. Section 4, the response. The caption was simple. "Update, the subject's initial response received at 12:05 p.m. By 2:00 p.m., the first domino fell. Aura Living deleted all posts featuring Chloe from their Instagram feed. At 2:30 p.m., they released an official statement. Aura Living is dedicated to principles of compassion and integrity. We have been made aware of some deeply concerning information regarding a recent collaborator. We do not condone this behavior, and we have terminated our partnership, effective immediately. We will be making a donation to the Animal Humane Society." It was a corporate death sentence. Her biggest collaboration of the year had evaporated in less than 5 hours. The fallout continued for the rest of the day. Other, smaller brands she worked with quietly removed her content from their pages. Her follower count, which I watched on a third-party tracking site, began to plummet, dropping by thousands every hour. The gossip blog post was picked up by a larger regional news outlet. My quiet, factual website had become a full-blown scandal. Late that night, Chloe posted a final, tearful video. It was shot on her phone, the lighting was bad, her face was blotchy and swollen. All the professional gloss was gone. She sobbed about being the victim of a vicious online attack and a family misunderstanding that had been blown out of proportion. She never admitted to what she had done, never apologized. She just played the victim, the one role she had perfected. But this time, no one was buying it. The top comment with thousands of likes said it all. "You're not crying because you're sorry. You're crying because you got caught." A few hours later, her entire account was deactivated. She had vanished from the world she had so carefully built. I turned off my computer, went into my living room, and curled up on the couch with Leo. He rested his heavy head on my chest, his breathing slow and steady. The war was over. And in the quiet of my apartment, surrounded by the only authentic thing that mattered, I had won. The days following Chloe's digital implosion were surprisingly quiet. I had expected angry phone calls, emails, maybe even a dramatic confrontation at my doorstep. But there was nothing. Just a profound and resounding silence from her corner of the world. It seemed that without her audience, without the validation of likes and comments, she had no script to follow, no voice to use. Her entire identity had been so intertwined with her online persona that when it was gone, she was gone with it. I felt a strange sense of pity for her, a fleeting sadness for the sister I once had, but it was quickly overshadowed by a feeling of deep, cleansing peace. The constant background noise of her judgment and expectations, a pressure I hadn't even fully realized was there, had finally ceased. A week after the website went live, a package arrived for me. It was from Aura Living. Inside was a handwritten note from their CEO, apologizing for the distress their campaign had inadvertently caused me and thanking me for my courage in speaking the truth. They also included a generous gift card and a collection of their coziest products, a weighted blanket, several scented candles, and a plush dog bed. Leo immediately claimed the bed as his own, curling up on it with a contented sigh. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. It was an acknowledgement from a stranger that my experience was valid, that my pain was real. The most unexpected outcome, however, came from Mark and Sarah. A few weeks after everything had settled down, they invited me and Leo over to their house for a barbecue. I was hesitant at first, my social anxiety whispering that it would be awkward, that we only had this one traumatic event in common. But I pushed myself to go, and it was the best decision I could have made. Their home was warm and filled with Otter. They introduced me to their friends, a tight-knit group of people who were funny, kind, and down-to-earth. No one asked me about the drama with my sister. They just asked me about my job, about my favorite books, and they showered Leo with endless affection and treats. For the first time in a long time, I felt myself relax in a social setting. I wasn't anxious Anna or Chloe's dramatic little sister. I was just Anna. That barbecue turned into a regular thing. Mark, Sarah, and I developed a genuine friendship, built on a foundation of mutual respect and a shared love for a certain goofy golden retriever. They became my emergency contacts, the people I knew I could call without hesitation. They became, in a very real sense, the family I had been missing, a family chosen not by blood, but by bond. Through them, my world began to open up in small but significant ways. I joined their weekly dog walking group, which met at a local park every Sunday morning. Surrounded by fellow dog lovers, I found an easy camaraderie, a community where the focus was on our furry companions, not on social posturing. I started to volunteer at a local animal shelter on weekends with Sarah, helping to care for animals who, like me, just needed a little bit of stability and kindness to thrive. As for Chloe, I heard about her sporadically through the grapevine. She had apparently moved to a different city a few months later, attempting a fresh start. Someone said she was working in an administrative job, far from the limelight of social media. I don't know if she ever truly understood the gravity of what she had done, or if she simply moved on to find a new stage for her dramas. In the end, it didn't matter. Her chapter in my life was closed. I eventually took down the website. It had served its purpose. The truth was out there, and leaving it up felt like holding onto an anger that I no longer needed. The revenge had never really been about punishing her. It had been about reclaiming my own story, my own truth. It was about proving that my reality was not something she could edit or delete to fit her narrative. My life isn't perfect now. The low hum of anxiety is still there sometimes, a part of my own internal weather system. But it's different now. It's quieter. And when it does start to rise, I have my pack. I have Leo, my constant, furry anchor. I have Mark and Sarah, my chosen family. I have a community of friends who value me for who I am. Chloe thought that by taking Leo, she was taking away my support system. But what she really did was force me to build a new one, a better one that was stronger and more authentic than any bond based on obligation or shared DNA. One afternoon, sitting in the park with Leo snoozing at my feet and Sarah laughing beside me, I realized I was genuinely happy. It wasn't a curated, filtered happiness for an audience. It was a quiet, steady contentment that came from within. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I had a life Leo hadn't held me back from, but had led me to all along.